The true son of the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Therefore he was condemned because he was accused of claiming kingship against the kingdom of Herod and the kingdom of Caesar. These points are again paralleled in the Gesar. Here we have the world king representing the great pattern of the law, who has come with the greatest strength and power that man can bring to the salvation of his people. He comes to preach the true doctrine. He comes as the warrior of the law, probably somewhat parallel to the Japanese concept of Fudo-myo, the flaming, demon-like appearance of Buddha. He comes as the avenger and the defender. He comes to warn the world that no man can break the law and survive. But in this case, his enemies raised against him not only the fault of claiming temporal kingship, but ridiculed him as a pretender. I think we can see this working out in the story of man's philosophy also. How many today would believe, for example, in the immutable operation of rebirth and karma? How many would accept the fact that the universe is a great moral structure, a great ethical complex, that it is in truth and reality the absolute wisdom syndrome, that it is the self-sustaining, self-managing, all-governing power? How many would acknowledge that we are the citizens of a moral universe, and that we cannot with impunity break the rules and the laws? This was more or less the dilemma of the Gesar. For like universal law, he was ridiculed. He was ignored. Every effort was made to destroy his empire. It was the empire of truth. Everything was done to betray him, to pervert the law. Men claiming in their selfishness that there was no law, but their own ambition. Turning to the law to destroy it in order that they could maintain a world of ignorance, superstition, and fear. Thus, his subjects, over-influenced by their temporal leaders, turned upon Gesar of Ling in the same way as the people of Jerusalem, aroused by the priests, turned upon Jesus. And those that had first glorified then cried out, "Crucify." This was paralleled very closely in the Gesar story, but with this one difference, that in the Gesar of Ling episode, the personality is very thin, and underneath it, the pattern of the meaning is rather obvious, more obvious perhaps than where we build a strong historical situation, which we are most prone to accept. But in the Gesar of Ling, the king of the law is, of course, the agent of Shambhala, the city of the law. Gesar of Ling was ordained in Shambhala to be the instrument and vassal of the law. He was therefore sent forth to defend the law, to be its hero, to preserve it against corruption, to strive for it, live for it, and if necessary, die for it.
He was appointed as
He
a
was
God
therefore
in his great
a holy soldier.
human and superhuman
He was, as we say it in Europe
to take
so
care
many
of
times, defender of the faith.
upon the law and understand
And yet the conspiracies rose against him.
the flowers and plants
And in many instances, these conspiracies would have succeeded had it not been
and how they could
that in the moments of greatest emergency,
mankind took
the
over
apparition of Padmasambhava,
the laws of nature.
the projection of the wizard teacher,
He sought
came to
within
him,
competition
counseled him,
answers to
and
problems
gave him that Merlin-like instruction.
bestowed.
Here we also almost see or sense the presence of Gunaman, the old knight of the Parsifal cycle.
Morally good.
Padmasambhava remained the instructor, the Merlin, the wise man,
On the side of the Mount of Olives,
and in most instances was able ultimately to enable Gesar of Ling
Ten Commandments,
to achieve the purposes
and many
for which he had
different
come into the world to fulfill.
the virtues of one
As
great
time went on, of course, the great battle,
religion, philosophy,
which in the Nordic cycle ends in the Ragnarok, the end of the old world and the end of the world of the gods,
spiritual reality,
closed in upon Gesar of Ling.
tearing apart the single.
He won all the battles, but he lost the war.
We are all part
He went on and on, struggling, striving, more and more enmeshed in the mysterious sorcery of circumstance.
a divine principle at the source of
In a wonderful, mysterious way,
finally will and
he again parallels the problem of modern ethics.
materialism developed in
We
society.
speak of
The
justice,
individual
but we are unjust.
strengthen his own
We
agency
speak of honor,
and
but
reach
we are
the
dishonorable.
universal plan.
We talk of law,
He decided
and
that
then we
he
compromise
would
it.
When
So
he
thus we,
history was
in one moment,
state,
support
really therefore
Gesar of Ling,
unfolded
and in the next moment we betray
the
him.
knowledge of the reality,
All the intricate and wonderful happenings of this life
giving it authority over
are, to the Tibetan and Mongolian mind,
physical empire.
proper subjects for infinite stabilizing. And we can see why this would be true. Any instance in human life, any circumstance in which any creature passes,
We could achieve all
would be one of the innumerable adventures of Gesar of
read
Ling.
this concept gradually.
Because Gesar, in this sense, is every man. It's the miracle play of that man.
Has begun to fall apart.
Gesar of Ling
Obvious fact
is our problem. The days we spend, the nights we walk the floor.
without understanding
Gesar is the little conspiracy which affects every one of us.
God when we have
For he is the image of our common problems. He is the image of our common struggle,
all we are in an
our fight for survival against the closing pressures of adverse circumstances.
in entering into
Everywhere the hero
that is
struggles on, only to finally fall under the blows which he cannot
why
survive.
do we feel it's important
And the whole pattern was, of course, established by Buddha in the beginning. He told firmly that the doctrines would gradually vanish from the earth,
corrections in our own behavior
that men would therefore have
the
to
survival of the
wait
planet on which we
with
live.
whatever patience their karma could provide
Destroying ourselves
until the advent
first
of the
time
next
in
week.
recorded history. There's always
After having passed through all the adventures and
we could
vicissitudes
destroy a family,
of a very
a race,
intensely diversified career,
position to turn
Gesar of Ling finally came to the end of the story.
something
In one way or another, the world hero always dies.
not because this was the original
Because this is a Buddhist world hero living in a world of Buddhist conception,
foundation of
he would not die of the sword,
so we are trying to explore
nor would he naturally do so in the symbolism as it would apply to Eastern religion and philosophy.
foundation upon
We
which
find Gesar of Ling
future for us all.
seated upon a rock,
We must accept religion
within four of those who had been true through all the
a
ages,
major cause of trouble
his
from the
four nearest and dearest
beginning
friends.
able to cause
They sat together in meditation.
it must put
Suddenly there was a great flash of light.
It itself has made
The
crooked
five
down
disappeared together.
We
All
therefore
that
say
remained
that if we look
was the
carefully,
rocks
we will
and
find
their
that
empty
close
robes.
to the walls that were
They had
fought
gone
at the beginning of the present
back
century,
into the mystery
the wars
of
dominated
the
no more
Shang
by
Shambhala
religion or
of which
justified
they had
by
come.
We have had
And
many
there,
wars
according to the legend, they still wait.
committed in the name
Wait
of
for the
God.
fulfillment of the end of the
Crusades
prophecy,
into the Holy Land,
the cycle that must yet be fulfilled.
the sacred site of Jerusalem, and
Now, the prophecy of the Gesar Khan goes on in this way. After it was obviously impossible to achieve at that time the fulfillment of the world's desire, a prophecy was given that the land would come under great evils, that one by one the houses of wisdom would be deserted or destroyed. Little by little the teachers would be persecuted, the monasteries would be empty, the books would be burned, and all that had been a great and wonderful world would return again to the desert from which it had come. And in the transformation, the keeping of the world would pass to the despot, to the false one, to those who reviled the law, betrayed it, and those who martyred its saints. And there would be a great and terrible darkness, a darkness of hopelessness. The body of the faithful would be scattered in many lands beyond the borders of the world. Early in the present century, the situation in Asia became increasingly acute. Travelers who visited not only Tibet, but traveled the long caravan route, men exploring like Roy Chapman Andrews, or seeking the mysteries of the old culture like Sir Oral Stein. These men camped with the pilgrims, camped with the merchants on the caravan route. And as early as about the time of World War I, legends began to flow along the caravan route. Legends to the effect that a great crisis was coming, a crisis that men had never known before. And the oracles, the living prophets of Tibet, began to speak of this. And everywhere it seemed that the world was rushing on to catastrophe. A catastrophe greater than men had ever known. But the Mongol and the Tibetans seem to have a faith that we do not have. They seem to have hopes and convictions that have not sunk very deeply into the consciousness of Western man. But even these poor wanderers on the sand and under the stars have something of a deep, abiding faith in them. And the rumors kept coming along, the reports that the great sessions of the immortals in the luminous palace of Shambhala, that the wise and the good and the noble of all the worlds were gathered there, that the Buddhas of the 10 regions had assembled in solemn conclave in the mysterious house of the law, that this great light shone forever from the rampart, and the wind horses carried the messages to the other corners of the world. The report was that the time has come for the appearance of the King of the world, that he must come in a strange and wonderful way like the baptizer of old,
struggling to
crying out, prepare the way of the Lord and make his paths straight.
the actual spirit of God
That
is something
the edict of the law was
is a common word
that the great armies of the light
on language. That is the
were to unite against the armies of darkness, as happened in Egypt,
we cannot
when the
overcome
hosts of Typhon finally came face to face
or infer.
with the sons of the Golden Hawk.
We therefore worship the
Here was the Armageddon.
not realizing
Here was the great war.
in spite
Here was the final alignment of good and evil.
there is only one creating
That
God.
in the vanguard of the army of the law
There is no reality
was to ride Gesar of Ling,
and there is no escape
who had waited for a long time
divine purpose
for the
for
day.
which this world was fashioned.
And with him would ride
Created the world.
his generals and his captains,
They created all the
those who had waited patiently in the Tushita world for the coming of the King of the world.
One
And this
infinite
mysterious power
benevolence. One
was to ride forth with the armies,
existing always for the fulfillment of its own
and
purpose.
then beside the campfires men speculated out under the Mongolian stars. What does this mean? How shall we interpret it? Why do we hear that the Gesar Khan is about to return?
We are perfectly entitled
How do we know that he is to liberate us
but
from
let us
bondage?
strive to achieve the
How do we know that he is to plant the banners of the law upon the highest ramparts of the east?
another name.
That his flag shall fly,
Mythology
and the red
in which
crested
all the gods in heaven fight
spears
for the nations of the earth.
with their yak-tailed
No
pendants
fighting gods over the
would be
city
seen
of
again.
today as the deity
What is this secret army
walls of Troy.
that was to rise from the dust,
The law and his own
that was to be embodied
These
from the shadows of old
have
things?
been sanctified and
This
justified
secret army to be immaculately conceived,
to perpetuate misunderstanding.
to rise
To
finally
some degree at least,
as
nearly
the
all
protectors and the
permit
keepers of human destiny,
of some type of
the new order of chivalry.
misunderstanding.
Now, some of the Mongolians,
Differences
Tibetans,
in basic principles
the people of North India,
are treated.
and the Chinese of the 5 provinces,
No reality in
they're not foolish people. They were not all ignorant
some ways to
camel
the
drivers.
process of truth to carry
So
forward,
they could not just believe in a legend
and among all the
by which there would suddenly appear before them an army such as might have been raised 1,000 years ago by the banners of Genghis Khan.
of discovery,
They could not believe this type
heavens above us
of coming.
are not at war
There had to be
with
something
themselves
else.
as well as with the
The
others.
coming of the King of the world
When we try to achieve this,
had to have a meaning
I think this probably
deeper
best
and more valuable than this.
is to realize that there are two ways
And
of
so
following
the
God. That is,
speculations
the ways
spread
by
into the philosophy itself in Japan, Korea, among the Buddhists of the Diamond Mountains, even among the saints and mystics of Nepal, northern India.
He cannot find the security that
Speculation was brought finally into harmony with the teaching itself with which the whole project was involved.
we know perfectly well
The only answer that could possibly mean
not
anything
really
was that
what he says
a
he
host of
He
entities,
claims to believe that
souls,
he is part
would
of
come
one
into the
family,
world.
but he is just going to exert
This
his
host of souls would arise from a certain and peculiar
his
chemistry.
own activities, so
But in this desperate time,
he believes that we
the
should
patient ones,
so he doesn't marry.
the armies of the
We
Lawn,
do every day, claiming
the
that
disciples,
that are real, but these
whose number was
in
beyond
fear
legion,
is the most important thing that we claim.
they would be the ones who would become the soldiers of the King,
The individual believes first
here, everywhere upon the earth,
to be
at a
himself,
certain time, and according to a certain law.
freedom upon those around
There would be an influx
him. Last analysis, the
of
only
enlightened souls.
individuality of which we are capable.
These enlightened souls
We have
would be the arhats,
mistake.
if we want to call them
In
that.
realities, there is no freedom.
That incredible array extending
How can you
beyond
escape from truth?
the power of
Why
vision
should you want to?
in the magnificent apocalyptical production of the lotus of the good law.
Because he has an unreality of his own
These
that he wishes to cherish.
would be the
He
awakened
wishes
ones,
to do as he pleased in a world
in whose nature the seeds of eternity had been sowed.
we see around us today.
For it was said, or believed,
Of
and the all old Jataka tales of the embodiments of Buddha carry the same message.
and we also see
Believe that in the course of ages, in the vast cycles of time which have preceded our present day, in every
now
generation,
we realize that there's another end.
seeds of truth
and that
fell
is
into
a
the souls of men,
world conflict in
beauty
Yermosai.
and of hope. These are the bija or bija
which we
seeds,
can
the
manufacture
seeds
to
of Buddha.
destroy each other.
The Buddha is nothing but a
It should sow
personification
for somebody.
of the world truth.
It should represent
Now into the souls of men fell these
to
little
destroy himself and his world.
soul seeds.
Now all of this is not really due to the
And
fact
some of
that
these
that
seeds
is bad.
fell upon sterile
It is not
ground
due
and they died.
to the fact that some
And
people
some of these seeds fell into fields, and the birds of the air devoured them.
it is simply due
Some
to
of these
certain
seeds
basic
fell upon
attitudes
good soil
which the human being has
grew
carried with him to
and
the
multiplied
beginning of his existence.
in a
He has
wonderful
been
way.
warned of a million times.
For there is nothing greater or more wonderful than the multiplication of the
These
mustard seed.
mistakes invariably and inevitably
So those in whose souls the seed of the law had been planted,
but he never realizes that he
in their various embodiments, were not aware of this.
can kill them.
They have no
In
knowledge
other
of
words,
it.
if we wish to survive as a
The
world,
mind
we've got to
that
stop
awakened with birth did not tell them of the old seed.
self-satisfying way of
Seed was in the heart,
we are now
and in
following.
this it was good seed.
We cannot keep on watching.
And in the hearts of these
we cannot
there
keep
gradually
watching
developed or unfolded the tree of the
learning
soul,
nothing from them.
as
And
mentioned in the mysticism of Sami.
The time
And there is much of this same concept hidden in the writings of Meister
in
Eckhart.
our own nature and do something
Those
about
in
it,
whose
and
souls
be
the
able to
seed
build
had found good resting
that we
place,
so gravely hope to find.
experienced transformations which they did not understand.
Start a new attitude.
In a wonderful way, they became
Now what
what
we
the Bible might call the salt of the earth.
we need is what most
They had within them
socialist countries
a great
now
power
they are
gradually
discovering
growing
that
up,
without ideals,
the power
they are going to go down.
to serve and to know and to
So-called
sacrifice
successful,
for truth.
communistic
They
states
became the
are in
great
desperate trouble.
constructors.
And the only thing that
Wow.
can take them out of trouble is the thing
They are the
that
ones who gave us the laws.
creative ideas
And in
of
Buddhism,
dedication to principles.
all the great
Principles they
teachers
try
of
to
the world
dedicate themselves to
are the ones in
so
whose
far
heart
down on the list of
the good
realities
seeds
that
have
they
been
could not
planted.
possibly accomplish the end.
Buddhists would not hesitate
Therefore, we
to
now
say that
find
Pythagoras or
actually,
Plato
on all levels, a
or
bankruptcy
Michelangelo
of
or
material.
Leonardo were all
With it, the bankruptcy
the
of
ones
all
in whom the
economic,
seeds have been
profit
planted.
abuse.
They didn't
All
know
these
it,
things are here.
but something in
getting
them
noticed.
longed
We've got
for
to do
beauty.
something about them. If we
Something
want
in
to
them
get
sought
forward
justice,
to the 21st century, we've
sought a
got to
better way.
survive.
When these
Those
seeds
who are now
sprinkled
getting into
so
our lives,
freely
into our world, small children,
also
must
fell
face
into
this.
humble hearts,
We may be with them for a
into
while,
kindly people
but if the
who
world
never
is going to
achieved
inherit
distinction,
the substance of our mistakes.
but who lived every day a little more kindly than their neighbor,
Rather than a legacy,
more ready to sacrifice,
decay, and pain.
more easily brought to
Our
realize
religion.
the beauties of wisdom,
Studying, recognizing
more ready to develop the eternal emotions which alone are justified: compassion,
constructive belief.
appreciation,
He has to make a
realization.
statement to himself. He has to
These
live, and he has to live.
were the army of the light.
He has to either believe
For in the great
the
emergency,
principle of good,
the light
or
was in them.
does not believe that.
And in the day of the return of Gesar of Ling,
consequences of that
he would call forth
acceptance.
the light in the soul.
And you can answer them
He would see in the souls of all those who possessed it
the
the
mistakes are
flickering flame
already
of the doctrine.
bringing a harvest of pain
In
and
some
misery.
strong and in others
They are
weak.
forcing the change of
But they are his army.
They are leading away from
The
all
army of those who refuse
experiments
to
that we
die,
talked about, and are
who refuse to give up beauty,
individual, the
who
mother,
have died perhaps
all children
100
around
deaths of pain,
praying for peace.
will not die.
He does not want to see her
Each
die,
time they come back,
and they come
the
near.
little jewel shines more brightly. The
These
blessed
things we
symbol
can see the
of the
mistakes
blessed
of what
law.
we're doing. They're
So
coming
the
in
thoughtful
by the
say,
millions. We
these,
can see all of the
in humanity itself,
misused.
these
And now we have
people, these
nice
souls,
10, 12 years
perhaps
to try to do
they are
something
nearer to us than we realize.
change this fallacy and
And
make it
perhaps
right. To have
that
some
same
kind of
light is
sense
in our own
for the
soul.
future. We've
But
got
if
to
this
begin to
be,
recognize
then we are banded together
between
to
doing
form the
as
army
we
of the
should
Hashepti, the sons of the
or
light.
doing as we should and
In
surviving.
a certain time,
There's going to be a clear
when otherwise things would
little
fail,
by little we are building an arsenal
these would be called,
for survival.
and out of space they would come in a great army to be embodied.
Therefore, we
When
now
they are
have
born,
a period of a
They
decade
would
or
not
more,
have the
in
slightest
which
idea of their
determine
destiny.
that arsenal shall
It would all be wiped out as it was
We
wiped
will
out of the
not
mind of
consider
Gesar of
this
Ling.
type of solution. We will not believe
But
that we
these
get rid of an enemy by
could
killing
not
him.
refuse
Or
their
that
destiny.
we believe that we will get over
When
a
the
nation
time comes,
by invading it.
they will,
We will find that all our destructive purposes come
reminded
back on our heads
in a
like
mysterious
fire
way,
under the eaves to roost.
of the duty they are here to perform.
To do
And when the word reaches
that
them,
which can only be accomplished by
they will awaken. That is, they will awaken within themselves.
is the one
This does not mean that they may necessarily still know
invites us
why they
to
were born.
contemplate the mysteries
But
of
they will know that
we have
they were
eternal
born,
space for
and
science,
that this call is the most important thing that has ever come to
powerful
them.
politics, but we also
So they will rise
eternal mysticism
and
for
follow
survival.
in the way of
Have
the
to
call.
find our way home.
The call itself,
To find our roots.
for
And these roots are
this
not in
strange projected phantom,
stock exchange,
this embodied bodhisattva,
the integrity of
Gesar of Ling.
Now, where are these
He symbolizes the awakening.
They're natural
When he arises and speaks,
quietly in the inner
when he gives the great battle cry from the ramparts of
soul
Shambhala,
of the human being is the
then
repository
those
of that
who are waiting
which is
will
necessary
rise
for
with
the
him.
redemption of the personality.
They will instinctively and inevitably become the army of light.
Savior. And
For
the
this they were born, whether they know it or not.
is the
For this they have lived countless lives, whether they remembered them or not.
So we
For
know
those
that
who
in each
form this army are the ones that somewhere, sometime,
this power
vowed
is our redemption.
that they would discover the
This
truth.
is our mysterious deity.
And all that
This is the power that
living which they have passed through
that can
has had a
raise the
strangely refined something about it, because they were born each
nerves
time
and feeds the multitude.
with this instinct for reality.
And it is the annual
But otherwise we cannot tell them.
world, so-called.
But we do know that in this world some men live for power and others for kindness.
Each year,
Some seek worldly honors and others reject it.
authority over the
Some feel that success is everything, and others choose quiet lives of learning.
symbol of
No one knows just why,
of the human
but it is in the karma of these beings. It is in the core of them.
of the human soul.
For in some
Actually,
are the soul
we are
seeds
therefore all
shining more brightly
of our
than in
soul.
others.
We do not have to
In
be
that day,
in order to
something
be
has to happen,
what we actually
by which, in a single moment,
by the soul within
those who have received
it is necessary that at that
the
moment
call and have become embodied
the formation be
as the sons and daughters and children of a generation
the symbol
will suddenly hear the voice of leadership.
of the eternal over the temporal.
They will hear
The victory of
the
eternity over
mysterious
the illusions of time.
order,
All of these things
which in the echoes of ether and in the mystic vibrations of things
it's time to let inner
comes
space
forth
conquer outer
in the
space.
heart of the Kala
The
Chakra.
inner space is soul. It is the
They
most
know that the time has come to turn the wheel of
soul
destiny,
in the planet, in the sun,
and they will rise, and no army on earth can defeat them.
and in the beast, and in the
And what will be the kind of war that will be led
there is a power
by
of
the
life
hosts of Gesar?
struggling to fulfill itself.
Scholars tell us, and the old yogins who have knowledge
There
of
is no
these things,
principle of evil.
that this will be no bloody warfare.
Misusing good.
This will be a strange, fatalistic war of light.
The greatest of use of all.
In this war,
So we're trying to get ready.
there will be no way of telling
We've got to-
friend and enemy.
One of them
from
is
the
we've
outside.
got to get spiritual
They will
value.
mingle together.
We've got to find ways.
There will not be any definite,
that materialism
battlefield.
is the security
but there will be a rising of principle against compromise.
or ignoring.
There will come forth a strong, powerful urge
Here with the victory of corruption.
to make straight
We do not think of it,
the way of the Lord.
but we know that if an individual
And one by one, the despots will find their followers falling away from them.
to corrupt those principles.
They will not
Therefore, we need some kind of
who have
idealistic teaching
the
to
dedication.
bring to us.
From the outside, it may seem all a strange.
In many nations,
Freaks of
this does
circumstance.
exist to some degree.
No one perhaps will know why it all happened.
It is all being
But the
sacrificed.
cry or the voice of the great generalissimo of the world,
It is not certain, and the defense is
Gesar
impossible.
of Ling,
Therefore, we are just drifting along
can be
nearer and nearer
the voice of a great leader.
that we do not really want to face.
Who knows?
We ignore the problems involved.
When
So we need
the Orient first became aware of Western history,
proper things for young people.
and they heard the story of Abraham Lincoln,
This is one of our ways of escaping
it was commonly agreed that he was a
The more
Buddha.
laws we pass, the more corruption we have.
Whether he knew it or not wasn't
We do not
important.
have a
All
law
of them do not.
to teach young people how to live.
Within himself, somewhere, sometime, long ago,
Of parents.
the
It is
seeds
the
of light were
process
sown.
of learning from those who
For this light he lived.
learning to
To keep
live
faith
right
with
from
this
parents
light, he
who live
died.
right. This is the only way it
He
can
was, in
No matter
all
how much
Eastern way of thinking,
corruption and,
one of the ahas,
and integrity
one of the great teachers of the law.
There is no social order.
It wasn't
that
important
corrects
whether he
the
knew it or
young
not.
person.
For it is only from the inside of things that you can tell.
The individual.
It is only those who have the inner eye that can know
In a very great statement.
the plan that moves behind the face of things.
Is more secure. than
But this
the
was the
integrity
point under
of
consideration.
There is no nation
That when the great
than the most corrupt.
flying sky horses carried their messages to all parts of the world,
Correction here.
some would hear and know.
Comenius.
When the banners of Shambhala were unfurled, and the great Tibetan tankers showed the king of Shambhala stepping down from his throne,
System is a kind
it
of
meant
graduate institution.
that the day was near.
The child goes for a
No one knew how near.
having received the basis of
No one knew when the great betrayal, the great crisis,
where
in the moment when,
the parent doesn't
according to the Hindu belief,
know. The parent hasn't.
man reaches an extremity
The child's children.
which his wisdom is not great enough to assist him
The
to
first
meet.
line of defense against
That moment,
disintegration,
the Lord of the world comes forth again.
This is one of the great problems we have to
Now we begin to sense,
We've got to start with
even at our present day, the coming of this extremity.
and we cannot do it by
We
legislation.
realize that
We cannot put a policeman.
not only are we confronted with a great international
We
struggle,
cannot demand these things from
but that the
parents.
struggle is coming onto our streets, into our homes, into our hearts.
The integrities of this level,
the forces are arrayed strangely as though on a battlefield.
values of
There are no boundaries to this battlefield except boundaries of thought and ideals and principles.
the beginning of the child's growth.
Here we have
When it goes into school,
a knight-errantry of nobility, striving like the Arthurian knights
how to live,
against the strange
how to die.
monsters of corruption.
In school, the child
All this we see.
at basic
We do not know how far it
outlook
goes.
toward values,
But for some reason along the caravan routes, men knew it was coming. We didn't know, but they did.
of its world.
We thought we were going blissfully on our way,
There has to be
building a great material culture
be any in life.
that would bring heaven to earth.
Now we get to the point, perhaps,
But instead of doing so, it is threatening to bring hell to earth.
perhaps this child is already on its
We are no longer secure in these things.
propriety, simply on the
But we
basis
see in Asia itself the rising of this great
we
turmoil.
have another problem. That
We
of
were told long ago that the day would come when Tibet would be ravaged,
employers have
when its holy ones would be destroyed, when its saints would be martyred, when its people would be scattered,
integrate the characters
when it would suffer also a diaspora,
the individual who works
by which
the business
an innocent
itself
people
being
would be
dishonest or dishonorable,
cast to the winds.
simply adding
The
to
Tibetans
the-
believed this.
and that
They knew it was coming.
adding to
They saw it in the portents of the stars and the rattling of the oracle bones.
and
They knew it was coming.
mature in thinking.
So they also, by the same prophetic quality, made a kind of analogy that is very, very interesting. It's always interesting to find some small group of ethnic structure, some comparatively slight and fragile nation, likening itself to the whole world, seeing in its own destiny the destiny of humanity, and in its own salvation the salvation of all other men. Tibet had this also. And this they shared with the Eskimo. For the Eskimo believes that ultimately he will rule the world. There's a long way to go, but he may make it if present trends continue. To Tibet, their own country was a microcosm of the whole. The disasters that happened to them were disasters parallel in all other nations. To them, the preservation or restoration of Tibet became a symbol of the restoration of the whole world. To them, therefore, their present catastrophe is a symbol of world catastrophe. They are a little symbol of a great injustice. They are the small, helpless victim. But we shall know what day each one of us shall be a small, helpless victim. But Tibet has been long touched by the grandeur of a concept, the concept of the Mahayana school. According to the Tibetan, there are certain things we have to always remember. That all these disasters that arise through the perfect working of the law. Tibet at one time tried to conquer the world in military means. It had a vast domain, no bearing upon its present state. The old Tibetans say, those that were the days when we conquered by the sword. These are the days when we are conquered by the sword. The old wheel has to turn. That which lives by conquest dies in the hands of the conqueror. But it does not die utterly. Nature does not destroy to reprimand. Nature does not take the human soul and cast it into perdition because that soul has karma upon it. No, it is washed away by pain, washed away by suffering and by compensation. But as a result of that, there shall rise again that which is good and true and beautiful in all
Well,
things.
most of the mystics have come
The
about
gods themselves, according to Buddhism, cannot change the course of karma.
suffering, privation.
They fall under it
They've also
as well as
come to
mortals.
martyrdom. The
But
way
karma
of
in
the Lord
itself
is
has
not
only
easy,
one end,
but it is
the
easy
salvation
to
of all that lives.
And while the little half an
Or
hour ends
peoples go
with
down, cultures
a
perish,
serious sacrifice
men go to the grave,
for the truth,
but the great plan goes on.
for fulfillment
And this
and
great plan is toward
the individual
a better kind of world than we have ever known,
and honest
a world in which
may be a little poorer
the
in money.
growth
We will not
of the
be among
truth
those
seeds
who do
in
the
ourselves
gnashing of teeth when things go
will
wrong.
finally bring about
Actually,
the brotherhood of mankind.
the reformation of all
And Gesar of Ling is the soldier of this war.
we must find the fact
He is the one into whose keeping is this strange pattern of retribution.
in which all problems
He is the agent of karma.
were here in which there is a
He
solution
must bring things to the destiny that they deserve.
a fulfillment of
But
growth,
all the
stability,
time,
and peace as
he
a
is
result
fighting for the
of
light.
growing our own stupidity.
He is the armed warrior seeking for peace.
So we have all these things as
He
part
is the
of
general who knows
religion.
that it is the first
Now,
duty of the
we
general
know that we should do all this
to
the
prevent a
hard
war.
way. Where our way
In this
is
symbolism,
to simplify situations so
the
that
two steps then
pains
become
and
obvious.
miseries of growth are
It
far
is
less.
Gesar of Ling that must
One of the
clear the
simplest
way,
things to start with is to get over the
must lead to the victory of right over
its
wrong,
own name.
must restore the great structure of the law,
There are 72
like the
names.
Krishna in his earliest embodiments.
We've got to
He must
learn
dive into the ocean of darkness
to practice
and preserve the Veda,
and
or the light of the law,
religions
from the
and
darkness of the Kali Yuga.
all of them have a
So
spirit
Gesar of Ling is the fighter.
conviction. And
He is the one that must bring these things about,
physical in all of them. It
who
changes
must
in wording because
gradually
of language.
force the karmic
Changes in
pattern
customs because
into
of
its
different
proper
environment.
relationship with
But it
truth.
remains the same morally and
When
ethically.
he has accomplished
Always
this,
has been and always
he
will
will
be.
then lead his armies and his
Any
generals,
major religion in the world,
and they will line up in great files of glory before the rampart
cause and the time,
Shang Shambhala.
compromise, various theologies
And they shall
become rich and worldly,
bring their glory to the King of Kings,
splendid.
to the great Arhat of the color.
But when it gets up to this stage,
He then shall Gesar the
more
Khan
trouble getting
say,
into heaven than a camel
I
through the eye of a
have
needle,
prepared the way.
as we learn from the Scripture.
Not by
Evidently,
bloodshed,
there is a needle gate, or was, in
but
Jerusalem.
by forcing
That gate was
the
so narrow that if a
clarification
camel
of
went through,
principles.
it had to take off its load.
My armies have risen against
Oh,
compromise.
listen. The camel
We have
could
been
get through,
tired
but what
of
it had
vice
carrying with
and
it
wrong.
could not.
There came into the world those who rose against evil and overthrew it, rose against corruption and cast it down, rose against tyranny, and tyranny is no more. Then, according to the ancient legends, the kings of the world, the great Arhats of Shambhala, will prepare for the next great cycle. In that time, they shall announce the coming of the Lord Maitreya. This is the body of the legend. Now, the thought of the thing is very important, I think. How shall we ever be able to solve the problem we see around us every day? The only answer probably that is possible is that at the appointed time, the great army of souls held in suspension behind the veil of life will move into embodiment together. If this happens at any time, then the generation that follows must be greatly altered. Then ulterior motive will not find its victim. For these dedicated souls will not be lured by the hypnosis of evil. They will not be corrupted by selfishness or self-centeredness. The moment we produce a powerful army of the incorruptible, corruption is gradually destroyed. So the Gesar Khan legend means to the Tibetans and the Mongolians that an army of souls waits to be born. And when the trumpet sounds, they will be born. And when they do come into the world, they will be the soldiers of the guardian king. They will be the soldiers of the great law keeper, the guardians of the temples and the sanctuaries, the Neo and the Tenno, all of the strange and wonderful symbols of the protectors of inevitable. For each of these guardians stands at one of the four directions of space and is obligated to see that the great wheel is never destroyed, to protect value, that the valueless shall never triumph. And the Tibetans and Mongolians believe that this is the way, and that the moving into the human race of these wiser souls is the answer. Under normal conditions, these wiser ones are assumed to come in, one here, one there, according to the needs of times and places. But when the need is universal, when problems are no longer limited to nations or races or small parts of the earth, but the problems are the whole earth, then they cannot be solved by one entering here and another there to find the ear of a thoughtful ruler. Now the great legions of the Arhat, described in the Lotus Sutra, extending as far as the eyes can see, in every direction of space, these legions fade out of the heavenly worlds and are born as infants, to grow up, to pass through all experiences that we know, but to have within them the priceless treasure of the flaming jewel, by which in their own hearts they can never be corrupted. These are the armies of light. And these are the soldiers of Gesar of Ling. And in the light of this, I think the whole story takes on a very dramatic and rather inspiring aspect. And perhaps you will find it worth thinking about. Thank you very much.